In the 1950s and 1960s, 35W and 94 freeways transformed transportation infrastructure in the urban fabric of Minneapolis. Several blocks of Elliott Park neighborhood were removed to make way for the southern entrance to the downtown Minneapolis core. The freeway effectively disconnected Elliott Park from other communities, such as the Loring Park neighborhood, Phillips neighborhood, and downtown core. In the early to mid-1970s, MnDOT approached the city of Minneapolis about making an attractive entryway to Minneapolis from 35W south, which was then less than 10 years old. The area between where 35W entrance and exit ramps exist was a large weed-ridden swale. At the time, the area was still heavily residential, with the presence of the old Curtis and Leamington hotels, as well as various other smaller residential hotels and apartments. Triangle Park was designed to claim the area as a residential and pedestrian environment, despite the intrusion of the 35W freeway that had rent the previous street fabric. MnDOT collaborated with the city to create a design for a gateway in the area. It was one of the first experiments in gateway design for a city. Serving on the Committee on Urban Environment, or CUE, were architect Ralph Rabson and University of Minnesota landscape architect pioneer Roger Martin. They both contributed to the design of Triangle Park. Rabson apparently had a fuller concept of the park as a complete gateway that involved an elevated plaza area to complement the landscaping. Rabson's idea was to create a UN-like themed plaza with many international flags flown on large poles, anchored by an architectonic fortress-like stone wall that passers-by would encounter as they approached the elevated plaza. Tom Thorson, now with SRS Architecture, implemented the project while working for MnDOT in the mid-1970s. MnDOT's budget was significantly smaller than Rabson's vision. Thorson attempted to use plants and landscaping to express Rabson's architectonic intentions. The stone retaining wall was replaced with a sloping hill from the park to the freeway ramps. Thorson planted vegetation with steel edging to create a crisp and defined effect on the slope. Bachman supplied the plants. In fact, Larry Bachman, the owner of Bachman's and CUE member, personally supervised the installation of skyline honey locust trees and flowering crabapple that are still growing there. Thorson used red barberry as the understory for the honey locusts and spreading juniper as an understory for the flowering crabapple trees. Thorson claimed that the park was absolutely gorgeous when it opened. Over the 30 years since, the park was mostly abandoned, with the exception of replacing the understory with lawn. The sole surviving remnants of the original planting were the hardy skyline honey locust trees that flourished despite the fact that they were never pruned or groomed. At the turn of the 21st century, downtown Minneapolis has experienced a tremendous housing boom in the Warehouse District, the Mississippi River, and Elliott Park, where Triangle Park is located. This increase in residential density and homeowners in the downtown vicinity has increased demand for higher quality green spaces and circuits, as well as public safety and aesthetics. The Grant Park development of condominiums and townhouses is a large development on the eastern edge of Grant Park, next to 35W freeway exit to downtown Minneapolis. Grant Park maintains the existing building morphology of Elliott Park with townhomes that line the block. A tall tower looms over the development, facing the city skyline and Triangle Park, with literally hundreds of residences looking on to Triangle Park. There are two other large developments currently under construction within a couple of blocks of Triangle Park: Skyscape, Sexton, and Ivy Tower developments. Another large development has been proposed in the same vicinity, called 1010 Park Avenue. With the exception of Triangle Park, the vicinity of the area is largely cut off from green spaces and exercise circuits. Elliott Park is ridden with surface parking lots and walled off by large institutions such as Hennepin County Medical Center, the Metrodome, the Downtown Core, and freeways 35W and 94. Moreover, Elliott Park's main park is blocks away. A particular problem is that many of the residents in the area own dogs that need to be let out to relieve themselves and get exercise. This presents a particularly hairy dilemma when densities increase disproportionately to green space and exercise circuits. Triangle Park presents an interesting opportunity to remedy these problems.
was a project that was discussed by the Q Committee. At the time, it was called the 35W Triangle, and it was a swale, which is to say just a depression between the entrance and exit ramps of 35W.
I am overwhelmed with the number of people who live in Grant Park who are here. I've never really had an opportunity to meet so many people from the building, and this is exactly what the neighborhood dreamed of, that people would move to the neighborhood and then become actively involved.
Elliott Park Neighborhood Incorporated is a citizen participation organization. It's all volunteer with 3 paid staff, but we depend on our community volunteers, and so many of them are here today.
Triangle Park is at the intersection of 3 neighborhoods. Loring Park, Elliott Park, downtown, of course, and we're experiencing a lot of redevelopment in the area.
In the 1850s and 60s, this was farmland. I believe there were truck farms, produce farms. You know, you grow the stuff, haul it into the central market, probably at Bridge Square. Then you get, you know, the first generation of houses, fairly widely spaced, you know, just regular wood frame houses. Then shortly after 1880, all those are moved to other parts of town, and you get what we think of the historic neighborhood here, which is actually the 3rd generation. But you know, the brownstones, the brick apartment buildings, townhouses, growing up in support of the central business, you know, housing, because people had to be basically within walking distance of work.
Is there a way that in this design, through the use of materials, that we can start to educate people about what this space has been historically and back well before 1970, as we pointed out, and the notion that there were buildings here and that there are foundations that were here and so forth that might...
It seems like so much of the history of the city reflects transportation.
Kind of inform how the space itself
you know, the
gets
horse and
developed.
buggy era, the streetcar, yeah, the automobile era, and then here the big thing was freeway being dug better part of the way around the neighborhood, isolating us, cutting us off.
I should point out that the emphasis at the time was the appearance of the park from the freeway as an entrance to downtown.
I didn't even realize this neighborhood was over here, and I just lived blocks away. It was a complete surprise to me.
One of the major concerns was safety and security. And I think that may be perceptual as much as a reality.
When I first moved here, it was kind of scary. There was, you'd get out in the morning, go to the garden, there'd be pieces of wood about this long, just consistently. I realized that's what people were carrying around to protect themselves at night.
One thing I think would make the biggest difference in the park is when I walk here, I can see in the entire park. And that doesn't mean seeing the highway. I don't need to see this right now, but I need to see everything that's in the park. And I can't right now, so I won't go in it. I mean, it just doesn't, and even if something happened there, there's nowhere to like get help anywhere nearby quick.
Yeah.
You know, when I moved here just 7.5 years ago, there was kind of it was a little more of a raw edge. And I don't mind an edgy neighborhood, but this wasn't really a positive way. There was, I don't know how much of it was trouble that was resident in the neighborhood, and how much of it was just the kind that drifts through, and that'll happen anyway.
Group spoke to the lack of safety, and one of the things that people suggested was bringing down the berms along 10th, and that was again something that probably all of you who live in the area and are familiar with it want to see happen.
There's no entrance, like,
Yeah.
you know, there's no building if anything were to happen.
So the first week that I was here, I had gotten moved in, and a friend came to visit, and as she was leaving, I got a call from her while she was in her car, and she said, "Julie, I just found a wallet in the alley." And needless to say, when we realized that somebody had been robbed right in our backyard, it was a little scary. Friends, family kind of gently asked if I knew what I was doing by buying in that neighborhood, and I made a point in that to get to know my neighbors. Most of us in the building, you know, was one or two people in a place. We watched out for each other, and back then, the language of the neighborhood was that it was a neighborhood in recovery. Any establishments with liquor or beer or anything, that was a big deal for the neighborhood, and really we didn't want them because of what they had created for the neighborhood prior to my arrival. So
there was a lot of evidence of people drinking. There was bottles left around, and you know, people laying in the park that hadn't gone home, and it didn't feel scary to me, but I kept hearing about how bad it was, and from that it's gotten a lot more comfortable.
Although right here is a terrible place to cross.
It's just dangerous right here.
No. You have to go across the street and then down and then over.
Because it's the entrance to the freeway. People coming along here don't want you to cross, and there's no light for you to cross. There's no walk. There's a walk here, and a walk here, and a walk here, but there's no way to tell you to walk here. So you just have to dash. You just have to look for the opening and go. And people coming along here don't want you in their way because they're going to do it.
A bicyclist was badly mangled or killed right here.
Trying to cross, and the car's going onto the freeway.
Being there, and the cars just kind of just speed through here.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they do. If the light is green, this becomes a ramp to the freeway.
There's no designated crosswalk. There never was, and I can tell you why. And it's a traffic engineer concern.
Yeah.
Because of the entrance to the freeway, and traffic engineers looked at it 30 years ago and decided, no, we're not going to invite people across here because it was considered too dangerous. What the status of that is now, I don't know, but obviously they haven't put one in yet.
It strikes me as odd that there's a traffic light down here that lets people onto the freeway. So it makes really no sense at peak traffic times to encourage people to speed up there nowadays because they just speed up to a red light down here.
How one programs this, what the activities are, and who programs it is going to really be important to the success of this.
You know, I always think of that line from, I think it was Soul Asylum song, "Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd." And if the Triangle Park got to be the kind of place that drew people, and, you know, was friendly and well used, that makes it fun to go a little bit out of your way to go.
I wonder if there isn't a possibility that Grant Park or Skyscape or Elliott Park could perhaps sponsor activities that occur here that attract people from throughout the city and throughout the region, for that matter. And whether it's you know, selling the vegetables that are grown here, or the flowers that are grown here, or an art fest.
Flower shop, ice cream, lattes, something very small. Maybe could provide some kind of source of income for maintaining the park with the rental of it. Provides a sense of security there. There's something lit and always there, and just a nice neighborhood amenity.
Opportunity for vendors in the Park Plaza area with portable kiosks and furniture that can be set up during the day that you see in big cities, where people can spend some time in the plaza. It's taken down at night for security.
I mean, I know that in, you know, Elliott Park's master plan is, you know, a lot of verbiage about linking all of the green spaces in Elliott Park and really creating a pedestrian circuit so that, you know, Triangle Park and Franklin Steel and Elliott Park are actually connected via greening of the streets and making it more pedestrian friendly. So, I mean, it would be kind of ideal, instead of just to make that insular, to really create opportunities for eventual expansion out into the community.
We talked about really emphasizing the opportunity for a circuit for pedestrians as well as for the dog. Thank you. Right on. We have been practicing that all morning.
There are a lot of dog owners in Elliott Park.
Oh God, yeah. The last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years.
So dog
dogs all
park is
over.
definitely something desired.
Yep.
Friends with dogs in both buildings. They've got some pretty defined places that they go to, but usually it's there and back. And the idea of having a route, especially for some of the larger dogs, would be really, really neat. And having a downtown dog park would be unique too. Got a lot of friends who end up going down to Snelling or down to, over by Uptown to do that, and to have a chance for dogs to interact with each other in the city would be kind of fun too. So.
And maybe even little things like, railings or posts where it would be easy to attach a leash to instead of having to go through all sorts of complicated tying and untying.
I love it. I go down through the front entrance and there are always so many dogs down there. It's great, and they're always really well behaved, and there's every kind of dog you can imagine, and it is really fun. I love it. I was just in the sales office of the Nicollet, and they are talking about being a dog-friendly building there as well, and that is, I think, 57 stories. So that would be a lot of dogs. How many cities do you know around the country? How many urban downtown parks have dog parks? Yeah, I don't know of any. I don't know. I haven't studied it, but I'll bet it would be unusual. And how welcoming to have that as an available feature of downtown Minneapolis.
I don't know about the other groups, but this room seemed to have an awful lot of dog walkers. And so it spoke to the importance of the pedestrian on a 24/7 basis. Evidently, if you have a dog, you're out 4 times a day. So it spoke to 24/7, year-round, making sure that whatever happens here is as inviting on a day like today as it is in the middle of summer. Let's get intimate, just like the site is.
The series of spaces that are along the street, and that this might be just another one of those spaces. This notion of terracing is a way, again, of protecting plants and changing the mental image of moving from a freeway environment to a city environment. We talked about the fact that walls can do a lot in terms, and there was some analogies made to the airport where the walls have come in as a way of defining space, giving you a corridor experience, controlling that experience much more carefully than kind of the open land that just tilts away in a typical side slope to a freeway.
You're looking at it as a gateway. Couldn't the outside of it, where the berm on the outside is, be really formal, like the airport? As you come in, it's got all that limestone. It's lit. It's got great native plantings, and then the inside of the park that's really residential, be more informal with the lanterns and the coffee shop or whatever kiosk the people.
In addition to that, the idea that walls can protect plants. So there might be reasons physically for plant material as well as aesthetically to start to, as you come underneath the 11th Street exit bridge, to start to change how you feel about this space, and the notion that this has to be very bold and very simple as a space. So this notion that there can be a car can come through something that reads as a plantscape from above, but that the original triangular space really has a certain boldness about it and simplicity about it.
Just some very exciting opportunities to just really kick up the park, give it some sparkle, give it some presence.
The other thing is also changing the mindset of the driver as you come under the bridge and you come through this space to slow people down and make them aware of the fact that they are leaving a freeway environment and they are entering an urban environment.
And think of it again as not only as a point of destination, but as an area that people drive by and walk by, going in north-south direction, arriving in the city and leaving the city, because the importance of a memory of your experience is as important as the beginning of that experience.
And then we talked about the bridge itself, because that is a literal gate. You come through it. So what can we do with the light? What can we do with public art to also suggest gateway and transition? And lastly, the notion that light, again on walls or uplighting trees or up in the trees, can also create this kind of magical transition space as part of the overall way of making people shift their thinking as they come in here.
Everything that comes up all the time is the problem of gentrification. The people who are moving into the neighborhood now are a very different group of people than the folks who've been living. I think it's good if we can add these new folks to the mix. If we can have that neighborhood that's integrated top to bottom, just a broad spectrum of people who not just happen to occupy the same few blocks of the city, but actually interact and tolerate each other. You know, they may or may not be crazy about each other, but they tolerate each other. There's a certain amount of respect that makes things work.
I'd really like to see a waterfall coming down that hill. And I'd like to hear that. I'd like to be able to see it from that bridge over there.
We've got a lot of parking lots, we've got a lot of asphalt in this area, and anything we can do to offset that balance a little bit would be beneficial.
I think that green space is going to be more and more important if this kind of dense development continues. Those places like the Triangle Park, the little courtyard over here, Franklin Steele Square are going to be such a treasure.
One of the priorities that Elliott Park Neighborhood Inc. has right now is to reach out to a neighborhood that has changed dramatically, and to get to know who those people are and bring them out and into community building opportunities to get to know each other. We've got a very diverse urban area, and to appreciate and learn from each other, whether we live in Grant Park or we live in a rental on 9th or 10th Street. There's just a really neat opportunity to pitch in, create something together, and we really do try to do that sort of thing. You know, the spring cleanup is one such opportunity where people come out, get together, spend a morning getting the neighborhood cleaned up, and I see this as the sort of thing where you could really rally a lot of folks and a lot of energy around a unique project that people could take ownership in and look back, sit back and look at it afterward and say, I did that. It's a pretty cool thing.
How can neglected public space be reprogrammed to promote social interaction, community building, public health, and a gateway to a major American downtown core? Antisocial, artifact, circuit, constituent, democratic, entertaining, ephemeral, foundation, gateway, glacial, green, historic, humane, infrastructure, introduced, natural wonder, contemporary, public safety, spectacle, urbane,